Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video. We are going to go over my top 5 tips that I think every single Yasuo player needs to know. Now, I really like his spot in the current meta and his ability to pick up lifesteal extremely early, so I think that Yasuo is just a little bit of a better pick than what it was last season. A little bit more defensive, a little bit more noob-friendly. That's why I wanted to start putting out a video for him now, because I think he can be a great pickup now. Now, my goal behind this video is to give you a better understanding of the champion, as well as to make you a better League of Legends player as a whole. I'm going to put timestamps at every single point in my video. They're going to be up at the top, as well as the bar down below is going to be segmented. So if you have any questions for me, I'm going to put a pinned comment down below with a link to my stream or my Discord. I'd be more than happy to help you out. And finally, I know there's a really big one-trick community, and I'm a little bit limited with this format, only being able to do 5 tips. So I would love to hear your thoughts and your tips down below. Maybe a random person that doesn't know as much about Yasuo as you do, you'd be able to help them out when they stumble across this video. So with all that out of the way, let's jump into tip number 1. Alright, so we are going to talk about runes and items, and there are a couple different setups that you can do dependent on your skill level, your enemy composition, team composition, and your overall skill as a Yasuo player. Now, Conquer is really good against enemies that are going to allow you to have consistently long trades. It's obviously better when there are more tanks on the enemy team. So what you want to look for in the lane is, are they going to actually take longer trades? Are they something like a Diana or a Fizz or a Katarina or a Zed that are going to give you a couple autos in the trade? Or are they something like a Syndra with Phase Rush that are just going to run away extremely quickly, just look to poke you out? This is when you should be taking something like a Fleet Footwork. So always think about the trading patterns that are going to be in the lane before picking your overall keystone. Next up, a couple of runes that you can kind of trade just depending on the matchups as well. I really like Triumph Almanac. Bloodline is very nice because Lifesteal works really well with Yasuo, but if they have a lot of CC, the Tenacity rune is great. Critque is great. And then Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter are very, very strong on Yasuo, just giving him that little bit of sustain in lane, as well as giving him a good amount of lifesteal that allows him to live and deal out the damage. Now, there are 2 mythic items that you can look to go into. We got the Immortal Shield Bow, and we have Gale Force. Now, Gale Force I'd recommend for people that are a little bit higher elo, have a really good amount of experience on Yasuo, and since this video is tailored for more of the newer players, I would heavily recommend Shield Bow. It is a very strong item currently for Yasuo, and it is just perfectly statted. Attack speed, attack damage, critical chance, lifesteal, and you get a little bit of tankiness out of it with the shield. So really look to pick that up. Next up, go into Infinity Edge, and then it is pretty much up to you in the game. Say some really standout items that I like are Bloodthirster, Phantom Dancer, and then Guardian Angel can be extremely effective. So always keep these items and runes in mind when you are playing, because they should depend on what the enemy team comp is and what you really need to bring to just really unlock Yasuo's full potential in the game. And that will wrap up tip number 1. Alright, and getting into tip number 2, we are going to talk about windows of power and how you can effectively do them to learn how to just trade and become an overall monster in lane. And there are a couple things you want to look for. Whenever there are minion waves around, you are just 10 times stronger, because it allows you to have a great amount of mobility when you are looking to dodge and you are looking to all in an enemy target. So that's the first thing you want to watch. The second thing you want to watch are ability cooldown windows. Since Yasuo's Q and E are on such a low cooldown, and you have strong consistent damage coming out of your auto attacks, and you are generally playing against mages that are very ability based, what you want to do is look for a ability timing that the enemy uses. Let's say a Syndra uses her Q or her E on the wave, maybe to wave clear, maybe try to harass you a little bit. This leaves her extremely vulnerable post trade, so you always want to look to trade back, and at least what you can do is zone her off minions until her abilities get off. Now, it's going to take a little bit of time to learn the different cooldowns of the pretty meta mages that you're going to be seeing a lot in the team fights or in the current meta, but you really are going to need to start punishing cooldown windows when you're playing Yasuo, because you really need to take full advantage of your ability to do consistent damage when you are running down in those team fights. Other things that you can look for are just having your knock up is obviously going to allow you to be a lot stronger in the trades, as well as having your summoners up. So if you have a bunch of minions around, your enemy has just used a bunch of their abilities, you have all of your summoners up, this is when you should really be looking to trade and punish the enemy. Even if you're at an HP differential, if it is a mage, maybe a Xerath that already uses QWE, you are in really no trouble at least until the enemy jungler comes around. So keep these things in mind when you are looking to trade on the enemy in the mid lane. And that will wrap up tip number 2. Alright, and getting into tip number 3 for Yasuo, we are going to be doing a couple of small mini tips. The first one is going to be jumping over walls with your E. As you can see here, the blue buff is out of range. You cannot get an E-dash on him, but all you have to do is aggro him. He's going to get closer to the wall, and then you can E-dash over. So with some of these wall jumps, it might be a little bit easier to aggro the minions so they get a little bit closer to your range so you can dash over those walls. The next thing I want to talk about is how strong the blue trinket can be with Yasuo, particularly in situations where you want to get a ult off. You can use your blue trinket to effectively give you vision and hit them with your last breath. If you didn't know, you are unable to craft your last breath when the enemy is hidden from your vision. So always keep that in mind when playing Yasuo, that the blue trinket can be rather nice. Next thing we want to talk about, Yasuo, item scaling, overall playstyle. If you are newer to the champion, you really just want to focus on getting as much CS as possible. You do not want to treat it like a Street Fighter type game where you're just looking to fight enemy champions over and over again. If you just get your items, Yasuo just becomes a huge powerhouse. So always look to just maximize on getting as many resources as possible. And the final small mini tip for Yasuo, a really big mistake that I see a lot of new Yasuo players doing, is as soon as they get the knockup, they are going in with their R, which can be very ineffective unless you are in a rush for time where you know the jungler is coming and you want to burst someone out. You can do a couple of different things with your Q knockup time. You can dash to a different target to get a little bit more damage down. You can also get another auto attack off before your ult comes off, and you can also E-dash on them before. There are a whole bunch of other things you can be doing. You do not have to overlap your knockup CCs. Always look to maximize the time that you have on Yasuo, because time equals damage, and the more damage you can do, the deadlier of a Yasuo player you are going to be. And that will wrap up tip number 3. Alright, and getting into tip number 4, we are going to be covering team fighting with Yasuo. The first thing I want to talk about is when you are playing Yasuo, you do not want to be the first person in. You do not want to just go in on maybe like a one-man knockup from a Nami wave that's going to put you in a very dark position. You want to wait until a couple of very high impact spells are used and then go in. The reason why is because you have a very strong, consistent damage champion in Yasuo, and the longer that you stay up and alive and an ability to be doing damage, the better. So using some of your maybe your poorer teammates that aren't really that good, or maybe they're feeding a little bit, using them essentially as meatbags is going to be a very effective strategy in your team fights, because they're going to be your enemy is going to be blowing a lot of damage on them, and it's going to enable you to just really run a rough shot over the enemy's back line. So always keep this in mind. The only exceptions are when you are pretty fed and you know your limits and you're a pretty experienced Yasuo player. So keep these in mind when you're looking to team fight. Also, coming from flanks can be very effective because everyone knows what Yasuo does. He is a very punishing champion, so people really remember his play style. Just running straight at people can be very problematic because people will know exactly what you are looking to do when you are playing Yasuo. And that will wrap up my tips for team fighting on Yasuo. Alright, and getting into the final tip, we are going to be talking about how you can look to do some of those outplays that are kind of crazy you see on the other channels, like something like Synapse. And these usually happen when you are able to kite out several people's damage while waiting for your cooldowns to come up, waiting for you to get that knock up, and then your ultimate. The last thing you would want to be doing if you're looking to do a 1v2 outplay or 1vx outplay is by just being in all 2 or 3 of their faces, just throwing out all of your abilities and consistently autoing, because this is going to put you in a very large the enemy is gonna have more uptime to try and kill you. So what you can do instead is dash around a bit, make it a little bit hard to hit you, and kite away from the enemy until you have your ultimate up. This is going to do two things. It's going to minimize their damage on you, as well as it's going to provide you with a very predictable movement pattern that the enemy is going to be doing when they are looking to chase you. If you didn't know, when you are running away and it's a 1v3 situation, they are going to be most likely running in a straight line to chase you because it's going to be the quickest way to get to you, and they are going to be lining up for your knockup, and you should be able to hit a couple of them with it, particularly in low elos. People don't really know this trick. If you don't really want to go dash around, maybe they have something like a Malzahar, just Q and then getting out of threat range, Q, getting out of threat range, waiting for your knockup, and then going all in with your ultimate can be another effective trade pattern that you can look to do when you are playing on Yasuo. It is all playing around your windows of power and building up your Q's Tempest stacks and not going in unless you have a Q. At least getting out of the auto range of maybe an enemy melee champion that is there. So always keep this in mind when you are playing Yasuo and you're looking for some of those crazier outplays, that you do want to wait for your windows of power, duck into fog of war, have them chase you in a predictable line so it's extremely easy to hit your Q knockups, and it will really pay dividends. That's going to wrap up my video, guys. My final tip for Yasuo: if you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. As always, take it easy.